Libra 2, light of the 6th race transmuted into the 7th. This has to be interpreted within the context of the times and life of L.C. Wheeler and Mark Edmund Jones, who first came up with this description. And it gives us to understand what the Theosophists were believing at the time. Around the 1890s or so, and for quite a while, there was quite a movement across the Western world. And this was called the Theosophy movement, an attempt by some very, very intelligent people to blend Western rational thinking with Eastern ideas of spirituality. And such names as Rudolf Steiner, Mark Edmund Jones, Carl Jung, Madame Blavatsky, Annie Besant, and others are associated with this movement. Anyone who was around and involved in esoteric studies at that time would have been touched, perhaps quite significantly, by the philosophy of these people. And a lot was gained. We moved into the new age of consciousness during the last century, during the 20th century, very largely built on the ideas put forward by the Theosophists. Such people as Jung really added a huge amount to astrology. He did this in secret, and it's only now becoming clear that he was perhaps one of the most influential astrologers of the century. And people like Rudhyar would have thought very highly of Jung. And Jung protected his reputation by keeping his secret. It's not changed very much today. People don't like astrologers much today, do they? And various of the writers of this period were tuning into what they considered spirit beings or sources of inspired knowledge. The Tibetan was the big one, as he was called. And from this source of channeled information, it was understood that the Earth is going through a change soon. Now, this was 130 years ago, and that change is now upon us. So this is the time perspective that we're talking about. It's not what we think of as time. It's bigger than that. But the species, humanity, and the Earth are going through transmutations at the same time. It's inconceivable that either of those participants could do it alone. Humanity going through its number necessarily means that the Earth is too. And the Earth, or at least the other way around, is obvious. The Earth, Gaia, is alive and aware of herself, and it's time for there to be a big change. The invasive species, humanity, or at least part of humanity, is corrupting her ability to be the way she wants to be and ruining all of her creative output, such as animal species and languages and peoples and so on. They're all being destroyed by humanity's bad guys. And so this is timely. We need to clear them off the planet. And I have decided to do a separate video on that particular subject and the model I use for how we carve a path through this difficult time into a safe future. So I'll refer you to that at the end of this video. Let's get back to the Sabian, though. The interpretation on the human level can be seen as when we have mastered 6 aspects of being, we're transmuted into the 7th. Excuse me. This I find easily understood within the 7 planes of consciousness in Sufism, and indeed the 7-word system. And that probably is a simpler way to access it, the 7-word system, where it's understood that there are 6 earthly lessons to learn, to do with boundaries, to do with socializing, to do with opening the heart and showing appreciation, to do with standing firm and making your decisions, to do with projecting a vision onto the world. And accepting that other people's vision is different from yours. So those are the six basic lessons, very quickly summarized. When you've got all that down, you know how to live. Nothing can trouble you then. Nothing. You're free of all the anxiety and stress, unless you choose to have that. And something raises you into the from the sixth level of being into the seventh level. And this is the point of threshold where you're just about to go through that shift. Some people might call that realization. The titles such as awakened being and realized being and enlightened being are often used as though they were the same thing. I don't see it that way. I think that anyone who's come to understand that life is a spiritual experience, we are souls living in a vehicle, which is a body and an ego. That's an awakened person that gets that. Minority, very small minority of people understand that. A realized person goes one step further and sees the illusion, can see through all of the lies, very likely opened their third eye. They just get the mystery in life, and then they're on a different track. They're into the ocean of exploration of the state of realization. And then if they fulfill that mighty task, it's just like becoming familiar with every drop of the ocean. Personally, then they're enlightened. We don't get a lot of enlightened people, but we do get quite a few realized ones. And that's the process we're on with this work. We're moving people from their state of being awakened to the shores of realization. And the Elven Star course has been designed with that in mind, to take people to the shores of realization. You got to step in alone, and you got to learn to swim with that knowledge, metaphorically. But you can be taken to the shores of realization, and that's what traditional wisdom, books on the subject, teachers, gurus, workshops, that's what they're for. To take any ardent individual, ardent seeker, to bring them from their state of confusion and doubt and ambiguity and misunderstandings, to clear all that away and bring them just to the edge of that state of realization. It's eminently possible, very doable, but you've got to take it seriously and you've got to prioritize it. Then you can do it. Any initiative that's developing light in the world will be met by a resistance. The dark forces come against that. And we can symbolize this process if we want, if we've got this dramatic, hysterical personality as Satan, as Lucifer, as the devil, as horrible, nasty things. You can do that if you like. But it's better to do it a different way. Light is meaningless without shadow, without darkness. Light is not visible. It needs to be seen in the background of something else, what is darker. And so, as we want to develop light, we equally want there to be a deepening of the darkness, or we can't do it. We can't see. We don't get any feedback. So if we think, right, I'm going to be a better person, I'm going to develop my heart, I'm going to do good deeds, and you do that, but there's no evidence of it, how do you know that you've done it? How do you know what works and what doesn't work? Everything's trial and error, so you might be projecting light into the world and actually getting it wrong. You might be creating more of a problem than there was before because you've got a false idea about what is light. We need feedback to develop our ability to project light into the world. And that feedback has no other form than shadow, than darkness. Now, if you want to call that sexy names like Satan and Lucifer, that's your business. But if you associate that with fear, then it robs you of your power. It was not a real force until it was invented, by religious people. But now it is. They've invented it and it's real. So for those people that want that force to be given a sexy name, they make it real. It's better not to do that. It's better to treat it as a concept. Light is all there is. Energy is light. We're giving it the name light, but it's energy. If there's no energy, there's no life, there's nothing. It's not just death, it's nothing if there's no life. And life is energy. So when we say light, we mean energy, and that means life. And there isn't anything else. There isn't any dark force that stops light being light. What it does, it uses your energy to create a result that's unhelpful, like hurting somebody or being greedy or whatever. That's what it does. It turns light into an agency of creating unhelpful outcomes. That's what the dark forces do. But that process of transmutation of light is something that we can learn how to do ourselves, and it's a very good thing to learn how to do. It just depends upon visualization and faith. If somebody's, let's say for example, somebody's throwing dark arrows at you, they're attacking you, then you just enjoy that. Just feel that energy coming to you. You'll feel it. You'll probably start to feel it at first in the solar plexus, but just imagine there's a shield between you and your attacker, and that shield has the effect of polarizing light. Now this is a legitimate physical experiment in physics when you study this as a schoolboy, and you can turn the polarity of light using visual images in your imagination, your visualization, and you turn that dark energy that's being thrown at you into light energy, and so you're actually being empowered by this enemy. I had this happen to me once. I provoked my teacher once. I pointed out that he was telling lies, and he didn't like that. He got incredibly angry with me. I really offended his ego, and he was a big guy, a big violent guy actually, and nobody knew him to be violent because he was a spiritual teacher, but his anger towards me was like the most violent input of energy I'd ever received. And luckily I remembered this facility of being able to transmute light, and I sat there. He was standing above me and shouting at me, and I just sat there and got into a meditative state, and I just absorbed all of his energy. And there's this Neptunian sense. If you're an astrologer, you can use the planets for shaping energy. So I just shaped his energy Neptunian. So he had no target. He couldn't see me in his blind anger. He couldn't see me. I wasn't there anymore. And he was empowering me with all this rage energy he was dumping on me. And I was loving it, actually. I had no fear. It didn't frighten me, but I played rugby. You get big angry men shouting at you on a rugby pitch every Saturday. It's not a big deal. If their fist touches your face, maybe, yeah, but you don't worry about what people do in their voice. So I was, yeah. Now this is the mystery of the degree that we're studying. Libra 2 is all about being able to transmute light. And we're approaching a time when those people that are given to fear and doubt and so on, they're going to really indulge it. It's already happening. COVID is an example of that. Yes, there's a little problem somewhere, but it was made into a huge problem by fear and greed. People that wanted to make money out of this, people that wanted to make juice on the media out of this. It was unnecessary. It was a fearful response. And there's going to be more of that, and there's going to be a lot more of that over the decades ahead, if we have decades. And those of us who actually affirm light, will find ourselves to be in the limelight on this matter. We have to be able to take shadow energy that's coming at us from all sides, in secret, all of a sudden, sometimes, and turn it into light. Now, let's not talk metaphorically anymore. Let's talk about reality. somebody will come up to you, a friend maybe, somebody that you know and love and trust, and they'll go on and on about conspiracy theories. Now, to be aware of the possibility of a conspiracy and to discuss the theory of it, yeah, that's meaningful, very helpful. But to go on and on about it and to speak in terms of very fearful responses and that there's nothing we can do, it's just wrong. That's not what a seeker does. What our job is in that context is to turn that dark energy into light. To be an exemplar of optimism, of faith, of love, of trust, to explain to people that they've got it wrong. Yes, there is an enemy. The enemy is empowered by our attention. So we take our attention away from the enemy, and then that enemy is no longer an enemy. And we understand that the enemy dumping their fearful anger and rage and wanting to control us kind of energy on us, we actually learn to transmute that. So that's the empowerment that we need to fund the additional work we have, counseling people, comforting people, helping people, resisting our own doubts and fears. We have to step up now and do that. And to be a spiritual seeker is not an easy task. It's work. You've taken on a burden of work. So this is the work. Whenever somebody is in your field of perception and they're doing something shadowy, then your work is to correct that. Now, it may be that you can't speak to them. People don't really listen to words. Not really. Some do, but very, very few. Our job is to be examples of beings of light. And not dressed up in fanciful esoteric terms. I'm a being of light. Wow. Just do good things. But do them always. Be a reliable source of light. Give money to beggars. Turn the other cheek if somebody's dumping on you. Be kind to everyone that you meet. Be truthful. Just do everything that you know is the right thing to do, and do it reliably. This is not only a gift of service to humanity, which is important in its own sake. That validates why we would do that. But it's more than that. It's your protection. That's how you protect yourself against the dark forces, whatever they are in your mind. To me, they seem rather silly. They're little boys dressed in strange uniforms, talking secretly behind doors about how to turn lots of money into even more money, how to get people already enslaved into more slavery. They're on a silly game. They're very, very silly people, these conspirators. Yeah, so yeah, God. The real difficult thing in life is actually maintaining the clarity of heart and mind to be creative in every moment and to create something beautiful out of an ugly scenario. Turn it around with your beauty and your imagination and your inspiration and your humor and your gentleness of being. Be peaceful. I'm not the first person to say this, of course, I mean, this has been said for thousands of years. This is the right way to live. It's just that people dress it up as a religion. It's bollocks. Sorry. It's nonsense. It's just humanity. It's what we should be because we're human. So this transmutation of light, that's a metaphor. Everything we talk about is metaphor. We have to learn to interpret these philosophies and teachings in our own way. They're not meant to be rigorous, scientific, measurable statements that would deny someone the freedom of expression, the freedom of interpretation, free will, in fact. And that's not permissible. This is a world of free will. We can't stop people from having it if we're true to our spiritual message. So I think that the workings of this transmutation of light takes a particular form in my imagination. I use this model of what's happening, and I describe this as the two whirlpools model. And it's sufficiently important for me to make a separate video about that. So I would ask you to consider having a look at that video. And it describes how this process of transmutation of light can occur. What's going on right now for humanity and for us individually, energetically, and what we can do about that. What's our strategy for the next period, the next era of our lives? So have a look at that video, if you will.